Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Roundup. If you have time, would you mind staying for the last two products that I'm talking about in this Roundup? Because the products themselves are fine, but how I'm reviewing them and how I'm going to be integrating them into the website, to these Roundups, and to maybe the YouTube channel or the second channel or something like that is going to be really important because you all are who matters the most. And I want to make sure that I get to do the things that I want to do while supporting you all, not stepping on your toes or annoying everybody. So I'll save the full discussion for later, but if you don't mind, hang out for the last two sections, and maybe if you have time, give me your opinion on that stuff in the comments. But let's jump in and see what we've got for the past week. First up, the DE25 Nano is now open for pre-order maybe, but there's a whole lot you're going to want to know about this before dropping your cash on it, and most of us may want to wait. But let me just explain what this is and go over not so much the concerns, but things that you need to know about it. First of all, the DE25 is the successor to the DE10 Nano from TerraSic. The DE10 is the heart of the Mistra project, and the DE25 might end up being the Mr. 2's root. It still needs to be confirmed by the core team. Sorg needs to make the announcements. So right off the bat, while it's looking very likely that this is a piece of hardware and a dev kit that will be a main focus going forward, there's no guarantee yet. So right off the bat, this is one of those, like, if you're a developer, an early adopter, or just somebody like me that needs these tools in order to do my job and test this stuff and get the info out to you, those are the people that should be jumping on this right now. Everybody else, like if you're on a budget and you're trying to put together a good Mr. kit, it's probably safer to wait. Also, I have no idea when this thing is shipping. It doesn't have any info on it, and after I purchased it, I got messages that were completely conflicting, like, we will start the shipping process immediately after the completion of your payment, as well as actual delivery time depends on in-stock availability of the product. So I have no idea when this thing's coming. It could be a pre-order for next year. It could arrive by the time I'm done shooting this Roundup. I have no clue. So temper expectations here. However, the good news is the price for this kit is $250 or $207 if you get a student discount, and you will not need a RAM module for it. In fact, you probably will just need a USB-C hub, and that's it, which, at that point, those are good things to have floating around anyway. So you don't have to go in and also pick up RAM and also pick up a bunch of other stuff just to get HDMI out. That should be fine as is. Hopefully, the people that are buying these are people who do things like make basic cases for it so that we could have some ideas of what the enclosures are going to look like. But that's basically all we need to know for now. All the cores in the main framework need to be ported over. And then even as that process happens, other developers have to jump on board with this thing as well. And on top of that, who knows? Maybe this thing is going to get vetted and truly be the heart of the Mr. 2, or maybe a month or two after, whenever it arrives at the people who bought it, it's going to turn out to be something that might not end up being the best choice. There's a lot of guesses, and there's a lot of educated guesses from people who work on Mr. all the time, but nothing is set in stone yet. So I'm just trying really hard to temper expectations. A couple other things to note. I tried to pay with a credit card and it immediately got declined. And then it was one of those things where you got to, let your credit card company know that it was an approved purchase. So I was lazy and I got tired of going back and forth and just used PayPal, which was $5 more, which it's not going to break the bank, but it's just one of those things to note to begin with. And also, if you are a case maker, please, I am absolutely begging you, go sideways this time, not stacked. And I know that's 100% opinion, and I know there's tons of people out there that love the stacked design. I do not. I think it looks like a bad science project, which, once again, you're at the mercy of using a dev kit. It's never going to just look like a console right off the bat. That's not something that could happen. But I think going out to the side, so the I/O boards for analog output, any accessories, hubs, trying to go out to the side might allow it to have cases that look more like the Mr. Multi-System 2, that looks like a video game console, not so much a science project. But that's just a personal opinion. The rest of this stuff in here is more fact-based, and just wanted to put that thought out there. So maybe from the beginning, we could go into this thing having something that feels like a game console. And also, based on the layout, we should be able to do something like just have an Ethernet extension wrap around to the back, as well as having a USB port, like a short USB-C cable wrap around to the other side for a USB hub. So cases should be able to be made where you just have a physical power switch in front, maybe a nice physical one that you could, a push button or a slide back and forth, whatever is easier, and have everything coming out the back like a normal console would be, except maybe some USB ports in front. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. I got to take my own advice and say we don't even know if this is going to be the thing yet. But if you're somebody who makes accessories and cases, please keep that in the back of your mind, because I do think that was one of the biggest complaints of it is, a lot of people just didn't like that wad of wires coming out of all ends sitting on their shelf versus something like a really nice Retro Game Restore clear case, which a lot of people loved looking at while they gamed. So just putting that out there. The developer JHDev 2006 recently released a PC version of the original Super Mario Bros. For the NES, and there's both Windows and Linux versions available, and all you need to play it is this free download and an original Super Mario Bros. ROM, and it works really well. It supports HD and ultra-wide resolutions, higher refresh rates, and a bunch of different features, and it's just one of those things where if you game on your PC and you have a nice modern display, give this a try. It's free. Why not? It was a lot of fun. I thought I was going to spend 5 minutes with it just to write up this post on it, and I ended up spending like 15 minutes messing around and trying the different settings and stuff like that. There's also different versions of the game, so you also have lost levels and stuff like that. Your progress is saved automatically, which is a pretty cool addition. And the USB controller I tried worked without any kind of interaction. I just had it plugged in before I turned on the game. The button mapping was perfect. Everything just worked, but there were no mapping options in the settings menu. So that's just something to note, is if you like a very particular layout and it doesn't automatically map it that way, I don't think there's an option now to be able to change that around. The other thing too is there's a bunch of cool features that, for borderless mode, widescreen, pixelated, integer scaling, drop shadows, all of that stuff. And all of it was very cool. I enjoyed it. I liked messing around with the different settings. I actually liked the drop shadow effect. I thought that was kind of neat to add depth to a very 2D game. But there are no CRT filters. So if that's something you're into, try shader glass, which now I'm just using this as an excuse to talk about shader glass. Somebody mentioned it in the Q&As, and I found out about it from John Linneman. So of course I nagged him for tips on it. And it's essentially another free program that you load up. You pick your favorite CRT filter, and you could do it full screen. You could put it over another window or just in a single display. And I thought it did an excellent job having CRT filters over this. So these are just two fun, free things that I thought people might be interested in, that if you game on your PC at all, would definitely be worth your time just to try it out and see what happens. Next up, Steve from RetroTech just posted a video of his CRT masterclass that he did at Retro World Expo, and this was a fun one. Now, obviously, it's never going to be the same as if you're sitting there in person watching Steve shock himself, but it's still something that is interesting for people. And, if nothing else, if you can't make it to these expos, this is a great window of what to expect. Or maybe this is just going to be something to entice you to show up in person next year and see whatever other craziness that Steve ends up bringing. But this was cool. It was the thumbnail was my favorite part, was showing the degaussing, and some kid came up to do the whole, like, let's hold a magnet at it to mess it up and then fix it afterwards. And it was really neat. Unfortunately, I didn't get video of any of the other panels I was in. I believe Downing got videos of his, and the FPGA panel we didn't get video of, but I mean, that's what you get when you try to rely on a lawyer to take video for you. So sorry about that. That was a great one too. But if nothing else, you get Retro World Expo's CRT Masterclass 2025 available to you right now on Steve's YouTube channel. Check out the post for more info. Next up is something I'm sure most of you have already heard about, but I want to give my own thoughts on it that are absolutely relevant to us and what we do. But Nintendo announced a Virtual Boy Nintendo Switch accessory that's going on sale for $100 this coming February. and it looks awesome. This is the exact kind of thing that I might have bought even if it was just a useless toy, but it's not. It opens up and you slide in either your Switch 1 or 2, and then it turns it into 3D, kind of like the Nintendo Labo, but it looks like a Virtual Boy. And they will have Virtual Boy games available on the Switch Online service as well. So you have to be a Switch Online member in order to get it. I mean, it's the usual Nintendo BS, but this is exciting to me for a couple of reasons. And the main reason is the potential for Virtual Boy homebrew devs, because the VU engine is incredible and people have been making games that are equal to or better than the best official retail Virtual Boy games. So I'm wondering, is Nintendo going to allow this accessory to be utilized with other games? Imagine any of the teams who make these games put their Virtual Boy game up on the Switch as just a downloadable game, one of the cheaper games that you get in this app store over there. But imagine it also has two modes, a standard 2D mode with a bunch of different shades of red, but also flip a button and now you could put it in this or maybe different accessories to access it the way you would have seen it on a Virtual Boy. I do realize that means porting these games over to the Switch. I know how much work goes into that. I'm not smart enough to do it, but I would love for there to be a possibility because the people that make these games are smart enough to do it. And I bet you at least one of those games would be a good fit. I also think Street Fighter would also be amazing, and Capcom, who knows? If Capcom thought they could make some money off of it, they would say yes to it. So that would be awesome. The only other thing too is, will this be compatible with the other Labo accessories, and could people make their own? So basically, as long as the eye covers are in the right spot, are there going to be other accessories that do the same thing? Because while I personally would love this, I think if you're actually using it to play, a lot of people might just want a lighter weight head strap for it so you could actually play it like a typical VR headset and not lean in forward into a Virtual Boy. I think anybody that grew up with this, or even if you're younger and you just want to experience what it's like, this accessory is perfect. But I guarantee you, if you really start to get into the Virtual Boy library, which there are some fun games in that, you might end up wanting a headset as well. So I don't know. Maybe that's just something the homebrew community could figure out. Maybe one of us ends up buying it and just take it apart to get the exact measurements so we could build our own stuff and to do it. Who knows? But I wanted to put all that stuff out there. And I most importantly just wanted to throw it out of potentially putting these amazing homebrew virtual games as digital sales on the Switch. Or I guess, physical, if you think you could sell that many, I would hope that you could, but I don't know about that. But who knows? I just wanted to put that out there. And if you're anybody who works on those teams, let me know in the comments or DM me or something. If what I just said is incredibly stupid, I'll own up to it and apologize next week. But I don't think it is. I think there's a potential to have some fun with this, make a bit of money, and have us, the people who enjoy the games too, really get to enjoy them the way that we might want to. There's been a firmware update to the Megaswitch HD, which is the HDMI kit for the Model 1 Sega Genesis and Mega Drive, that adds palette blending, which essentially allows for things like the waterfalls in Sonic, when combined with dither blending, to look really, really cool. And this is one of those features that, if you have the Megaswitch HD, you have to just update the firmware and try it out. And if you don't, I don't know if this is going to be a feature that makes you go out and install it, but it's certainly worth taking a look at just out of curiosity. But there's actually quite a lot more about this, so allow me a moment or two to get into it. So this is the hybrid emulation HDMI mod for the Genesis that uses all of the original circuitry and chips and RAM and all of that stuff in the original sound. However, it recreates the video output via FPGA. So it is a true Genesis, all original hardware with that one hybrid emulation piece of the video chip, and the output is amazing. It looks like you're outputting from a Mister. It's really, really good. Also, this is the one that Tito had done the video on that has the Master System module installed as well. And not only does it work amazing for Master System games, which just right off the bat, a little weird to see Master System games crystal clear from original hardware, weird in a good way, but since this replaces the video chip via FPGA, it also plays SG-1000 games, which if you were to try that on an original Genesis, you would get audio but no video because there's no video modes in that video chip. The video modes for it are the Master System and Genesis ones, not the original SG-1000, which, there's not a lot of amazing games on that platform, but there are a bunch of games that you probably would like to play, and now you get to technically do it all on original hardware here as well. I did a live stream that was supposed to focus on the Master System testing, but since the developer Stanislav jumped in the chat to let me know there was a new firmware update, I ended up going over all of it. So if you want to see exactly how to update the firmware, which is super easy, by the way, download a free program, download the firmware update, hold reset while turning on the Genesis, and have it plugged into your PC. That's it. I demo that in the video, and then I also started demoing the new palette blending right after, around the 41-minute mark, and then I continued to test it throughout the entire length of the stream. So I really think that this is one of those cool things that if you're into this stuff, absolutely. I normally tell you all, like, don't watch the stream. Everything you need to know is right here. It's just there for reference. This is the opposite. If you actually want to see what this thing is capable of, watch this stream. This one's actually pretty informative and will get you a great sense of what to expect. I did get to talk via the YouTube chat and a little bit afterwards with Stanislav, the developer, and he said that the FPGA is basically full. So there aren't many other things that could be fit into this without doing split firmwares. So maybe that means there's just an NTSC and a PAL firmware for it going forward if he wants to add more features. And please let me know about that. Is there really a reason that people would need both instantly, or in a scenario of you have to just reflash the firmware real quick to go between NTSC and PAL? Is that totally fine? Because that's what I think. I personally, even though I do some PAL testing now and then, I would rarely need to. I don't need to toggle back and forth in real time or anything like that. So maybe that's a way to free up some more space. And also, the only two things that I would like to see: one, a happy little bonus, not a big deal, 240p support from the HDMI out, so you could use, if you could find them, compatible HDMI to component video and RGB converters, so you get crystal clear output from that too. But I would also like to see aspect ratio adjustments, because at the moment you get basically square pixels. I actually talked with Firebrand X about this, and I'm trying to get my nomenclature correct, but I also just want to give the general retro nerd an idea of what to expect. But my favorite way to play Genesis, and especially Master System games, is in 5x for 1080p or 10x modes for 4K, because you cut the same amount off the top and bottom, or less even, than you would off of a standard CRT, but you fill more of the screen. And with 320 pixel wide games, if you just do that in even integer scale on both sides, you end up with something that looks totally fine. It's a little wider than you would see on a CRT, but you end up with a round moon and the round loops in Sonic. However, a 4:3 option would make it the same width as a CRT, and some people prefer that. Didn't really bother me too much for the 320 pixel wide stuff. The 256 pixel wide games ended up being definitely too wide in that mode. I did some examples here just so you could get an idea of the differences. And please keep in mind that you're looking at the gameplay area. If you fire up these examples, just click on all of them for full size if you want. You're looking at the gameplay area, not the blue overscan area. I left that off on the Megaswitch HD. So that's really it. That's basically the only thing I would really want to see added to this. And hopefully there's still enough room to do that. As a note, Stanislav already implemented interpolation, so having that non-square width, integer to 5x vertically, and then have it set to 4:3 using interpolation, you should get no shimmer on there, so you don't have to worry about triggering Mark for My Life in Gaming. And the last little bit, if you happen to upgrade right after you saw the stream, Stanislav found a tiny little bug that was just fixed in the next one, so just update it again. And if you're hearing this for the first time, don't worry about it. The latest version on the website is the latest version. But I thought this was really cool, and I love this mod. If the Genesis is the only retro console that you need to connect to a flat panel, this is what you're going to want to do to it. But if you have a bunch of retro consoles, it'd be way more cost effective to just pick up like a Tink 4K and some really good cables. But I don't know. I mean, if you're a hardcore fan of the Genesis, maybe both, who knows? But check out the post in a live stream for all the info. And I'm going to be doing at least one other live stream about this, testing some other stuff coming up in the next couple of months. So luckily my friend who owns this console is letting me hold on to it for a while longer so I could try to add some more cool stuff to it and do one final ultimate Genesis console build. The team behind the Pico loader has just released the no solder version of the kit for sale. US shipments are temporarily on hold for all the reasons. Hopefully, I don't need to explain why, but as soon as that's all cleared up, it should be available worldwide as well. And this is the same exact kit that Tito from Macho Nacho Productions did a video on a while back, but you don't have to solder anything with this. You just have to unbolt the 9 million bolts that are in a GameCube in order to get to it. But it's a very, very easy installation. And this essentially allows you to have a, let's call it an optical drive emulator, and also retain original optical drive use in your GameCube for a very cheap price, about 30 bucks. Just to clarify about the ODE, what this ends up doing for you is allowing a essentially plug and play way to automatically boot into Swiss. So it itself isn't the optical drive emulator. Swiss is doing all of that heavy lifting. But from a user point of view, it's kind of the same thing in that you pick this up, you also have to pick up some kind of memory card adapter. So either the SD to SP2 that plugs into the bottom, or one of the ones that plugs into the memory card in front. You load up the necessary stuff on that, Swiss, etc. And then that's it. This will let you just boot to either your disks or into Swiss and have all of the amazing options that offers. I don't want to get into that too deep here, but if you haven't heard for some crazy reason, Swiss is a piece of free homebrew software that is the Swiss Army knife of GameCube tools. They'll let you do an insane amount of stuff with it, and it's something that I would absolutely consider a must-have for everybody who uses the GameCube, including people who don't need homebrew and use all original discs. There's still a bunch of stuff it could do for you too, so definitely check that out if you haven't yet. But yeah, I'm a big fan of this stuff. I just think that having the ability to install this without soldering anything, it's all plug and play, and allow you to use your GameCube the way it was meant to be used and have homebrew options as well. I just think this is an awesome thing for $30. That is a very good price for all of that. So fingers crossed all the shipping nonsense gets squared away soon enough. And please check out the post for links, including the original video from Tito that shows everything you need to know about functionality and all of that. A crowdfunding campaign was just successfully funded for an open source FPGA-based handheld project called the Game Bub. This is aiming to be an open source alternative to the Analog Pocket, and right from day one, it'll play cartridges from the Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance, as well as ROMs from all of those platforms without any weird side-loading firmware or anything like that. You just treat it like exactly as you would expect, like sort of like a handheld Mister type of thing, even though it's a different FPGA and a completely different project altogether. However, since this is an open source FPGA development project, you could port any of those cores over, and I believe it's got a very powerful FPGA, certainly enough to play a lot of the cores that are available on Mister and Analog Pocket, but of course the developers would then need to do the porting themselves for that. So if you're an FPGA dev, this is probably something that you should be interested in. The price is $250, and the crowdfunding campaign is open for at least another week. So this is something where if you are thinking about getting it, you're going to want to make your decision on the sooner side, because you want to get it before it goes back into pre-order mode whenever it is eventually released. And it's expecting to be shipped to customers in February of next year, so a couple of months away, which I think is a really realistic expectation. I think a lot of these crowdfunding platforms have projects on there that when I read the goals, I'm just kind of going, that's not possible. They're not going to make that date. That's not realistic. And I don't get any of that from this campaign. Now, I'm not associated with it in any way. I don't think I know the dev, although I met so many people in the scene. Maybe I do. I'm just saying that very often I have warned you all about things that don't smell right in some pre-orders, and I get none of that from this one. So, of course, it's crowdfunding, so you always have the possibility of losing all your money. But I just don't think that's the case here. This looks very real and very realistic for all of the timetables and stuff like that. And I also like the prices. $250 for the main unit. You could spend a little extra if you want a campaign exclusive transparent purple version. It's $50 more. So that's kind of neat if you want to support the dev and also just get like a limited edition thing for yourself. And there's also a video out dock available for an additional $60, which I think is very cool as well. It's also trying to aim for good battery life. It's got a 720 by 480 4-inch LCD screen, which I think is a good resolution for retro stuff as well. And it just seems like something that's got the potential to be awesome and to really end up being like a portable Mister. which once again, they're not affiliated with Mister. Devs would have to port their cores over. I'm just saying from the mindset, this could end up being something like a centralized open source focus for Handheld, the same way the DE10 is the centralized open source focus for Mister. But if you want the specs, and if you're a FPGA dev, definitely check out the specs. I copied and pasted them into the post, but of course, check out the campaign for more info if you want it. And it just seems like it's got the potential to be a really awesome project, and hopefully a friend of mine will end up buying it so I could borrow it and try it out when it's released in February. And speaking of crowdfunding, Retro Fighters have just announced a new Kickstarter campaign for a pro version of their Brawler 64 controller. Now, the Brawler 64 is a very low latency N64 styled controller that would work on multiple platforms. And this version of it is aiming to perfectly match the full range of the N64 analog stick using its Hall effect stick. It even is going to have the same 8-way plastic, but also have all of the degrees match. I don't want to get into that too much here, but if you're into N64s and you understand how the analog controller works, you're already understanding what I'm talking about. And if not, the goal is to get as accurate to the original N64 analog stick as possible in something like this. It's also going to be wireless 2.4 gigahertz via a USB dongle, wireless 2.4 gig to an original N64 via the included retro receiver, or just wired USB. However, the wired USB will have 1,000 hertz polling rate. And I'm wondering how much faster they could actually get the latency down, because the original Brawler 64 had just 3 milliseconds of latency over wired USB and 8.5 over Bluetooth, both in X input mode. And while 8.5 is respectable, I mean, that could definitely be cut down a bit with wireless, but I don't know how much lower they're going to get the wired version. So be interesting to see. Retro Fighters, as of now, is the only company that cares about us enough to actually publish lag test results. And then, of course, encourage us to double check, because if you have lag numbers that low, you're going to want people to double check and post about that on social media. So I'm excited to see. The price is $65 and it's due to ship to customers in April of next year. And there's a bunch of other fun stuff involved with it, like removable faceplates and a couple of other cool things. But basically, if you were looking for a modern N64 controller, check out the Kickstarter campaign and see if this is for you. And after it's released, I'll probably borrow one and put it through its paces to see. But this is usually the type of thing I would have Beast take a look at for me, or any of my other more pro gamer friends. But I'm definitely interested in the latency, and I'm also interested in what N64 fans say about the accuracy of the analog stick, because if they nail that, that'll be a pretty big deal. I recently picked up a cheap wireless headset for streaming that was under $40 and performed way better than I would expect for something that cost less than $40. That's also why I wanted to wear it in this section, so that you could hear the mic for yourself. I'm not just modeling it on my giant head. But the other reason I wanted to specifically talk about it here is what I mentioned at the beginning of this roundup, in that I think I'm going to change how I do certain product reviews, but I want to make sure that you all are cool with it and think it's a good idea. And this, as well as what I'm going to be talking about in the next section, are the perfect examples. So this wireless headset, I looked up which was on promotions or on sale, found out that the Amazon Creator Program had one of these, which means you still pay the same price, but I get a tiny bit more of the minuscule commission I would get anyway on it. So I figured I would do a video, but then I thought, all right, this is something that would be a fit for a post on RetroRGB, because tons of you want to stream and do things like connect a headset to OBS, and you don't want to spend $1 gazillion on something. So what about a cheap headset that doesn't suck? So, all right, totally a fit for RetroRGB. And if it's something that you're not interested in, you just keep scrolling and that's it. Or you skip the section in the roundup. You don't worry about it. But this would not be, I think, a fit for the YouTube channel, because if this is not the content that the people who subscribe to YouTube want to watch, it's going to get buried in the algorithm, and so is the rest of my channel. So I started a second channel just called Bob's Short Reviews to dump these videos on, just to have a placeholder for this stuff, so I could do things like write a post about it, embed the video in the post, and just very quickly talk about them here in the weeklies, which, by the way, I'll get to that in the next section, but this would normally be a very, like, I would already be done talking about it if I wasn't asking for your opinion on this stuff. So I figured that would be good. That way I could upload the video anywhere else I need to. I could share the stuff that I like. If the stuff is garbage, I just won't waste the time doing a review at all, unless it's a safety issue. And then, of course, I'll put out like a little warning. But I think that would kind of be a good formula for being able to still do reviews on stuff, make a couple of extra pennies here and there where I can without offending anybody and stepping on toes. You know, I think I just don't feel like this would be the fit for the main channel, but maybe I'm wrong. You all tell me. I could certainly re-upload it or something, but having a second channel where I could just dump these reviews as reference, especially things I could just link back to in these posts without worrying about algorithm and if I make a tiny mistake or whatever else, I just thought it was a low pressure way for all of us to do this. And then I still talk about the post here to let people know about it. If you don't care, skip as always, which is why one of the many reasons why I timestamp this. So let me know what you think. Am I doing this okay? And there's one more thing to talk about as well that's in the same vein. So I needed an external SSD enclosure just as an additional backup drive for my setup. And I, as always, tested the crap out of it before I decided to keep it because so many of these USB devices I've tested over the past few years have been super slow, like broken slow. So I tested this one and it was fine. It wasn't as fast as a SATA drive connected directly to your PC, but it definitely performed respectably. So I just wanted to share it here as well, and I figured I would put the basic video up on the Bob's Reviews channel. And here's the other opinion I wanted of yours. That would be the end of the section. I was planning on anytime I stumble across something tech and nerdy, still just dumping it up on this other YouTube channel, mentioning it really quickly here, just like, hey, if anybody's looking for an external SSD enclosure that doesn't suck, check out this video, and that's it. But this wouldn't even be a fit on RetroRGB.com, and I guess I could also put it up as a YouTube short, but people generally hate those, and I kind of hate them too, to be honest with you. There's been one or two times where I thought it was a cool fit, but really, I just wish I could have put a guilt-free short video up without worrying about ruining the algorithm or annoying people that saw what, you know, a fancy thumbnail and thought, oh, maybe maybe Bob put another 80 hours into some crazy high production video and they get a 2-minute, you know, this thing that you might not even need doesn't suck video. So that was kind of the other side of things, is I was going to just continue to use this second channel for stuff exactly like this. And this is the perfect example of speed testing and doing it right. Took a long time. You know, I did it while I was working on other stuff, but whipping up a unboxing video and writing a quick script and slapping it up on this took no time at all. So I just thought, hey, why don't I continue to do this as well? So please let me know your thoughts on this stuff. Am I getting it right? Am I completely missing the point? Am I annoying everybody? And if talking about it's annoying you, don't worry. I don't plan on talking about this stuff again. I just hopefully get to continue to do this, make a couple of extra pennies here and there for the work that I put into testing this stuff anyway, and kind of just go from there. So let me know what you think. Links to everything are here. And if you want to subscribe to the other channel, cool. I always would appreciate it, but don't worry about it. This isn't going to be something that takes away from RetroRGB in any way. This is just something that hopefully will supplement it, both with the tech review side and a couple of extra pennies a month. A couple of super quick things before I go. First, I'm keeping the headset on because I'm too lazy to switch everything else back. But also, I want to shout out Roger, aka 8-Bit Esquire. Last week, I talked about all the awesome people that were hanging out on the RetroRGB booth at Retro World Expo. And while I'm positive I forgot a bunch of other people that came through, it was extra weird that I forgot Roger because I hung out with them all on Friday and Saturday, and he was awesome on the booth, equally as awesome as everybody else who was there. He was obviously cool to the people who recognized his channel, which there were quite a few, but people who didn't recognize him just thought he was a really knowledgeable retro nerd hanging out at the RetroRGB section helping people. So sorry, Roger, for forgetting about you. That's why I threw the little lawyer joke in before, hopefully give you a chuckle. Also, I have a couple of things I put up on eBay, which I'll leave a link, just getting rid of some extra stuff. Probably nothing most people would care about, but I just wanted to let you all know just in case. And of course, and as always, thank you to everybody who watches, listens, plays nicely in the comments, and especially thank you to anybody who supports in absolutely any way, because it really is you who's keeping all this going. So thank you all so much. I'm going to go spend the rest of my day walking around with the headset here, and I'll see you next week. This week's Roundup is brought to you by Neo Paradigm Entertainment. connecting Southeast Asian influencers with opportunities in the West.